Welcome to Urban Grown Stories, the companion podcast for the Urban Grown Tour, hosted by Cultivating KC. You will hear from urban farmers, growers, and advocates across the Kansas City metro area. From the history of local food in KC to the challenges new farmers face and the impactful ways you can get involved in our local food system, this story collection will leave you inspired, informed, and hungry for change.
In this episode, we visit Urbavore to hear from Brooke. This is their story.
Dan and I have been in the urban food space for, I guess, almost over 20 years now. So I got started when I was 24, and I'll be turning 43 very soon. So yeah, I guess we're getting close to the 20-year mark. And which is hard to believe. And Dan, it's similar. He's been doing this about as long as I have. As for Urbavore, just to give a little context of what we do today, and then we can kind of reach back. But Urbavore is a 13.5-acre farmstead on the east side of Kansas City, Missouri. And we are one of the largest, longest standing urban farms. We established Urbavore in 2010. And we grow a diverse array of vegetables and fruits using no-till regenerative practices. We also raise hogs for meat, as well as laying hens on pasture for eggs. We do cut flowers, herbs. I think the thing that makes our farm super unique is really our holistic growing practices, but beyond that, the holistic infrastructure that sort of complements this ecosystem that is unique to Urbavore. It's just a little different. So you will not find another place like this. I don't think in the region, maybe not in the country. So, but we both got started. We came at this in different ways. We actually met because of Cultivating KC. So, the person I'm married to, I probably wouldn't know if it weren't for Cultivating KC. So I'll start with kind of where I came at it. I grew up in Midwestern suburbia outside of Kansas City, and I was just always very disillusioned with the suburban consumer lifestyle. Even in high school, as young as in middle school, I was really like questioning the system and how it worked. It didn't make sense to me from a sustainability perspective, and then it also didn't seem like people were actually all that happy either. Like people didn't really seem fulfilled. It seemed like they were always just trying to buy more. And this, it's after this car, I'll feel good about my life, or after this new job or this promotion. And so, yeah, I kind of saw that at a young age. And I think I didn't know what to do with it back then. I think when you notice that stuff when you're younger, I think the first thing you do is kind of like rebel and turn from society and like seek, I don't know, maybe unhealthy ways of coming at something different. But eventually, once I got that out of my system, I decided I would just leave the country. Like if the American dream didn't make sense to me, maybe I would go to older parts of the world and try to understand how people lived before, they were missold on this dream or this idea that I was really grappling with. So I traveled in places like Peru. I traveled all over Europe. In order to sustain those travels, I would volunteer on farms in exchange for room and board. So I'd be living with families. I didn't speak the language. I didn't know really what was going on at all. I'd be sometimes living in a tent in their backyard or in a little hut or in like, I don't know, some crazy rustic situation. But it changed my life. I'd go out to work in the fields with these people who didn't, like I said, I didn't speak their language, but we would just connect in the dirt. Getting my hands in the soil and experiencing sustenance in that way is really what grounded me for the first time. And I guess gave my life purpose when I was really flailing to understand the purpose of life or the point of life, as jaded as that sounds. It was really like my aha moment. So after traveling and experiencing growing food in these older cultures, I decided like, that's it. I'm going to grow all my own food. I'm going to build my own house. I'm just going to go back to the land and, you know, procure my own basic needs. And that should keep me plenty busy. And, yeah, I also kind of felt as an environmentalist, like there's so many problems in the world, but everybody has to eat. So while there were a million things I could have done to try to approach some of the dilemmas in society that I felt needed approaching. I felt like food was at the center of it all. Food and soil health was kind of like everything smalled out. So yeah, I came back to the US and I decided I was going to grow my own food, and I ripped up my grandpa's acre and a half backyard with his permission, sort of. Maybe I think I was maybe delusional that I had his permission, but I ripped it up and I just started growing a massive garden. In that time where I was sort of teaching myself to farm, I learned about Cultivate KC. That is how Dan and I met through Cultivate. I would volunteer there. We were in the Growing Growers program together, and he was really like one of the only other young people in the urban ag scene. I mean, most farmers, I was 24, and, historically farmers are 60 plus. So it was weird for like a sort of alternative city kid to be even interested in this. So when I met another young person who was from the city, it was like, huh, okay, maybe we have something in common. Dan came at this from a very different place. I was kind of like this punk rock art school dropout, rebelling against the system. Dan was more like a quiet, intellectual, very smart, thoughtful individual who was a staunch environmentalist. Like, the kid who, like, before you knew what recycling was starting a recycling club at the, middle school. He was like that nerdy environmentalist kid. So he went into he went to school for public policy and urban planning. His environmentalism sort of spawned an interest in how we live, how we do things, and especially how cities are put together. He was also, big into social justice, which the way cities are put together really feeds into the social environment and equity and all of those things. So he was going to school for that, and in Pittsburgh. And during the summers, in order to save up money, he would work at a friend's orchard, 100 different varieties of heirloom apples and fruits. So he would work alongside this migrant crew, 17-hour days with these guys. And yes, he was trying to save money. He was making $6 an hour. So it's kind of funny to think that this was his money savings plan. Yeah. So people bitch about their wages now at the $6 an hour. I mean, come on. So he really was also trying to like improve his Spanish, and he was hoping to like do some writing about the migrant worker experience. So he's kind of again coming at it from this social intellectual place, but he actually just fell in love with the work, like 17 hours a day, picking apples with these guys. And doing really hard work. He realized that he didn't want to sit at a desk, that there was a connection there that, he didn't expect to find, and that it was, I don't know, there's just something about it. Like if you have that farmer spirit in you, it was his aha moment, like mine. Like once you get down in the dirt, he came back to Kansas City after that experience, and decided he needed to learn more about like organic agriculture and vegetable production and kind of broaden his knowledge of farming, because that was conventional orcharding on a larger scale. So he got a job as an apprentice at what is now Cultivate KC. And then the next year, he actually managed their farm. So that was the first time where Dan and Catherine, um, the original founders of Cultivate, were like finally at a place where they had enough of budget to hire a farm manager. I mean, this is a big step for them. And so he was their first farm manager. And that was a crazy experience. He was working like 100 hours a week. And I don't know, Dan and Catherine were just trying to run a farm and an organization. And today, seeing, I don't know how many employees are at Cultivate now, but like it is just, the organization has grown so much, and it does so much now. And so for me, in terms of like seeing where urban ag has come, if I just look at Cultivate flow, And think about Dan as their first farm manager with just Dan and Catherine as staff. Funding wasn't there, and Juniper didn't even exist at that point, and they were kind of like trying to find their niche, like what was Cultivate really going to grow and evolve into. So yeah, Dan and I met during that time and we fell in love. Now we work together 24/7 and we hate each other, but back then we were very much in love. And it was, yeah, it's all in a way because of Dan and Catherine and that organization. I don't know if our paths would have crossed. So that's kind of hokey, but like funny, it's weird. Organic agriculture, I guess I refer to it, there's conventional agriculture, right? And there's organic agriculture. Organic agriculture, in its most basic terms, is basically conventional agriculture. You're just subbing out, certain products for different products. It's, like, so you're subbing out, let's say, ammonium nitrate as your fertilizer that you use in a conventional system for manure. You're not really actually doing the land any differently. You're not seeing the soil as a living organism. You're not seeing the ecosystem as an interconnected piece of all of it. I had to learn that. I got into this thinking I'm going to farm organic, right? I'm not going to use poison. I'm not going to do this. And I realized that, like, no, I mean, I'm coming at this from a completely different place. Like, I want to farm in accordance with nature, like subbing one product for another. Well, guess what? I'm actually not even going to use products, So I think in the organic ag scene, it's really evolved, like people understanding it, just like I said, like subbing chemicals for a non-chemical product that does the same thing to actually like just re-envisioning landscapes and our relationship to them. So regenerative, really in its like simplest form, is not just about not harming the land. Regenerative agriculture is actually about taking a piece of land and stewarding it in a way that you're enriching it. Like every action you take, let's say to grow food to feed people, is actually making the land better, and that's so vitally important. I think of organic agriculture as like the status quo, right? Like we're just going to leave it as we found it. That's not good enough because humans are depleting the planet like with every breath we take, right? We need to give back. We need to nourish. And we need to build. So that's exactly what we do here. I tell people that my job every day is to actually build soil. It's actually technically my job is to feed soil microorganisms, which are the life that makes up my soil. So my soil is a living thing. I mean, when I look out at my field, people will see life in the crops growing in those beds, but I see more life in the soil. Like where my eyes zero in is on the soil and the tilth, and like, oh my gosh, look, I can't imagine how much life is in this handful of soil. The crops are kind of like, basically, when I look at crops, their health tells me what's going on in my soil. So, I mean, and it's really fascinating when your brain starts to understand things that way. And so what we do here, yeah, is we grow soil microorganisms, and then food becomes the vehicle in which we're able to do that. So you could even argue that the food is a byproduct. If we're improving the soil every day, then there's no way for us to like kind of get out of our lane. And what we found too is like, when you stay true to that one thing, it sounds sappy, but it does fall into place. Like the finances do fall into place, the crops actually produce more than you could ever imagine. What we did here at Urbavore that really makes us unique is that even though, indigenous cultures from all over the world have been stewarding their land and practicing different forms of regenerative agriculture, like it is not new. There's nothing new under the sun. Like that saying is very true. However, in modern times, it's all been forgotten. Organic agriculture isn't that. Or, people across the globe, even those same cultures, fast forward to today, are not farming. So it's all been forgotten and kind of buried. So while we do take different principles from different like indigenous farming practices, I think in a modern context, especially as two idiots who never had any formal training, we're just kind of out here trying to make it work. Anna and I kind of invented it as we went along. And so when we first started farming, we decided we weren't going to till. That time, nobody wasn't tilling. Like our fellow vegetable farmers, Dan and Catherine, all the other farms. There weren't a lot of urban farms. So like my fellow rural farmers that I knew, everyone tilled and they thought we were nuts. They're like, you guys are just going too far. Like, we've cut you a lot of slack. We know you're weird, but this is just nutty. And so, yeah, we created this crazy no-till system out here. And it was really freaking hard, like if I knew now what I knew then, I could start no-till fields successfully like that. But I had to learn how to do it. And it frankly almost took 10 years, to perfect it. So anyway, we weren't tilling because we wanted to keep our soil biology intact. It's this whole idea that churning up the soil is like putting, the soil in a blender. It kills all the microorganisms. It destroys the structure. Once you destroy the structure of the soil, your soil is then able to grow healthy crops without all these inputs and the products for what we found to be so unsustainable and that we wanted to stay away from. So we didn't till. We used things like heavy straw mulch to essentially kill pastured grasses, right? And then we grow right in that. And it was evolving these fields on heavy clay ridgetop land at Urbavore. This is not cropland, but trying to evolve those fields in this no-till fashion. I mean, honestly, like the first year, it was like chipping away. I mean, I have pictures of Dan with like a baby strapped to his back, like chipping away at the soil, just trying to plant like single clove of garlic. It's like chipping away at rock. We couldn't even make furrows in the soil. So it's like in retrospect, I'm like, that was so stupid. We really made it hard on ourselves. But I think we needed to go through that process, to really learn and to perfect our methods. But fast forward to today, we actually found that compost is the secret ingredient to, no-till soil health, to profound soil health. Like I can't sing the praises of compost enough, but one problem farmers have in accessing compost for their fields, if they're going to do this no-till thing right, is that compost is extremely expensive. If you're going to bring in a dump truck of compost from, say, your local organic, materials supplier, like let's say Missouri Organic, it's going to cost you, $500 for a dump truck, maybe. And that's going to cover a fraction of your field. We were struggling to put enough compost down. As a result, we were just barely using any. And then in 2021, this was like a game changer for our farm business and our food production out there. We decided to buy a curbside compost pickup service that already existed. It's called Compost Collective KC. The owner was a customer of mine, a CSA member. She was selling it, and she couldn't think of two better people to run a composting business. And after a lot of debate, thinking we can hardly, we're working 100 hours a week as it is. How are we taking over a business? After a lot of debate, we did decide to purchase this business, which meant that we inherited about the time, and we've grown the business now, but we inherited maybe like 2,000 subscriptions. So these are people that are paying a monthly fee to have their food scraps picked up at their curb. These are a lot of people in the KC metro, but we have, we're all over the larger metro area, even in Lawrence now. So today, though, we actually take in about 25,000 pounds of food scraps from residential households every single week. And when we bought the business, they had been paying Missouri Organic, our large local composter, to dump the food scraps. Well, we created efficiencies within that business by creating our own compost site on the farm. So now we have our little compost site, or we call it like a community scale compost hub on the farm. So that material comes straight to the farm. we have kind of perfected our recipe for making compost, but we mix the raw food scraps with I say raw food scraps, it's cooked food, it's meat, it's dairy, it's everything. I guess we mix the pure food scraps with a certain amount of carbon. So this is like usually leaf mulch, like just think of all the suburban leaf bags from all over, the metro and wood chips. We get free wood chips from Asplund Tree Trimming Company. And so we mix the food scraps with a certain amount of carbon. And after various turnings and different processes, in the end we get some of the most fertile, microbial rich compost you have ever seen. I've used a lot of compost in my day. So now, we have unlimited quantity of the best compost I've ever used that is made on site. And I can use as much of it as I can possibly manage to get down on the fields. Like, honestly, my limitations is not enough hours in the day to spread compost. So, but what that has done just in the 3 years our compost has been going on our fields is literally double the production of food. It's insane. I mean, it's still a farmer's life is still hard, but you can't imagine like what it feels like to be able to grow food successfully. I mean, like with half as much effort as before. It was a game changer because I do think while our farm was technically profitable, like we weren't, we were both full-time farmers, we were making a living at it, we were incrementally building our farm. It was killing us. We were working 100 plus hours a week. We were, just it was just such a struggle. I just don't know how long it would have gone on like that. All it is, the city's waste being like us saying, hey, that's a nutrient. Don't throw that away. Don't put that in the landfill where it's going to, leach off greenhouse gases that destroy our planet. Why don't you just let us take it and we'll turn it into food? Like, so we feel like it's like, oh, this is the answer to like the climate crisis and the solid waste crisis and the local food like shortage, right? Like we can we could create a thriving local food system with fertility that is being fueled from our own waste as a society. And like I get so excited about that idea. So we joke like everyone knows what farm to table is now. Like that whole locavore movement is understood, but now we're trying to educate people about the whole table to farm piece. Like it doesn't stop there. It can be full circle. Like your waste can be the fuel for your future food. And by not only is that great for the local food system, it's actually improving the environment. So when you guys are here, you are going to see the compost site right in the middle of the farm. It's hard to miss. It's going to look like big piles of dirt, and you're welcome to like go stick your hands in it. Like it'll be hot. All the different piles you'll see are basically compost in food waste in different stages of breaking down. So it takes about 6 months from start to finish. You'll also see finished compost in big piles throughout the farm, kind of like staged near fields. And you are welcome to, I don't know, kids are always running up on them barefoot, like, jumping off them, like, by all means, stick your hands in. So that's the real obvious of like, okay, that's where the good dirt's coming from. I think you guys will really just be struck by the ecosystem itself. Like the environment is going to feel different. We're going to hear birds. You're going to hear frogs. You're going to see like fruit trees and different herbs and perennials like coexisting with annual crops. It's going to almost look more, it won't so much be like as permaculturally cultural as a food forest, let's say, but it is not going to look like your monocrop rows of crops. Like, and you're not going to just see a bunch of plastic on the ground. You may see some landscape fabric here and there, but you're going to feel more like you're in an edible landscape. Crop fields are generally like, they're somewhat monotonous. There's not a lot of variation in color and form. A lot of times you see a lot of bare soil, maybe cracked with like irrigation tape running down it. Frankly, farms aren't usually very pretty. And that's okay. I don't think working farms have to be pretty, but I think accidentally, when you farm in accordance with nature, it just is pretty. So Herbivore, I'm not saying it's always as well kept as I want, or I don't have the pile of pallets that I wish I'd moved, or the T-post sitting there, but like it is just prettier than a lot of farms. Because just every day we are nurturing nature and trying to allow it to thrive. So, yeah, you're just going to see a bunch of diversity in the field. You're going to see, it's early in the season, so maybe not as many things will be flowering, but you are going to see a lot of flowers still. We plant a ton of flowers to attract pollinators. You're going to see a lot of flowering perennials and natives, which is something we also like strategically plant. You're also going to see livestock kind of integrated in the farmscape. So you're going to see chickens foraging under apple trees. You're going to see pigs like in a peach orchard, eating fallen fruit. You're going to kind of see this full circle natural system like before your eyes. And I don't know. It depends on the person. For some people, maybe that'll be totally uninteresting. But I bet if you're on a farm tour, you're probably pretty interested in this stuff. You're going to see butterflies, you're going to see kids running around as part of the ecosystem. Like it's just like a happening place. It's amazing what you can grow even in pots on a balcony or, even in a raised bed community garden plot or even in your little backyard. But also, even if you don't want to take that on, the amazing thing about having an urban agriculture scene is that there are farms actually all around you that likely accept volunteers. So, if you want to come out and volunteer for a few hours and get your hands in the dirt, my farm is happy to have you. I'm sure Young Family Farm is happy to have you. I'm sure a myriad of farms on the tour are happy to have you. So just remember that like this tour is basically connecting you to community resources. So if you need some green space, if you need to turn off your phone, I have volunteers that come out here after work once a week, just literally to turn off their phone, listen to birds, and forget about the BS that happened in the office that day, right? Like, and they pull some weeds, and then when they're done, they're like, wow, that looks really good. It's like you see, it's immediate gratification. So it's great to connect with the farmers and seek out volunteer opportunities. One thing that's unique about coming to Herbivore, especially if you do want to start growing in some pots or amend your garden or whatever, you can leave with free compost. We have excess compost. We're in a situation where we're not allowed to actually sell our finished compost, so we donate. We just donate so much compost. It's crazy, and I love it. It feels so good. Like the compost to me is like this earth saving, black gold. So come bring buckets and load up compost, when you're here. For me, like, even though times are tough, I think about COVID and I think about like where we are politically right now. And, I think, yes, I think things are going to get harder, but there are silver linings that come with that. When there aren't eggs in the grocery store, and when the food prices spike up, and when people lose their jobs, I mean, all those things are awful, but it does force us to kind of come together and get back to the basics. I keep thinking of like the victory gardens and things like that. I mean, in a way, Dan and I have been trying to live a certain way and set a certain example for forever. Um, and a lot of times, we live in a consumer culture and people kind of roll their eyes at us. They're like, whatever, I can just go to the grocery store. But again, in times like this, I think people realize that resources are limited and that sometimes we're posting on sort of this imaginary idea that the planet has limitless resources for us and that everything's always going to be fine. So what I think is so amazing about tough times is it does bring people together, and suddenly people recognize all these valuable resources around them, like frankly just the soil and eat. And we can come together as a community around food. Especially, food is something that we all depend on for survival. So therefore it's something we all have in common. Like, the typical saying is like, if you eat, you're involved in agriculture. Well, yeah, that's just so perfect. You absolutely are involved in agriculture, whether you know it or not. So in terms of like staying resilient in tough times, I can't think of any group of people better to familiarize yourself with than the farmers, right? And I don't know, like I've been doing this for 20 years and it's how I pay my bills. So my customers are not just customers. I mean, these are people that I've cultivated relationships with. And for me, it's super personal to feed someone. To me, it's such a great honor. Like, people say, oh, it's really important to have a good doctor. It's really important to have a good lawyer. It's really important to have a good farmer, someone who is literally, you know, cultivating the earth to conjure healthy things for you and your family. Like, I can't think of a more profound relationship, really, on some level. So I just think it's, so important that we start to connect with each other around our food, and then that helps us understand sort of the importance of place. And like, Missouri, this is its own terroir, just like people talk about certain grapes that grow in France or certain, a certain type of onion that grows in a town in Italy. But, Missouri does have its own type of soil culture and climate that produces a certain type of food and a certain type of community and culture. And I just think we need to celebrate that. Think outside the box or think outside the grocery store, the big box, and, really give local growers a chance. Go to farmers markets, go in a CSA if you can. Ask farmers if they have any sliding scale options. Like we've, been adding sliding scale options to our CSA. And I think you'd be surprised, even if you don't feel like you can outright access it, that there are a lot of avenues and a lot of people out there like trying to make it easy for you to get really healthy, nourishing food for your family. So yeah, support local farmers, because without that, the movement it's two-sided. It's the eaters and it's the growers. And if you don't have one or the other, it doesn't work.
Food for thought. How can you help support your local food system? Start with buying local through CSAs or your local farmers market. Volunteer at your local growing space, cultivate your own food, or voice your support of urban growing to your elected officials. Visit cultivatekc.org/urban-grown-stories for more information. For more on the growing site featured in today's episode, please check the show notes. Thank you for listening to Urban Grown Stories, a podcast brought to you by Cultivate KC in partnership with KC BizCare. Urban Grown Stories is hosted and produced by Jessica Garcia, with interviews recorded and edited by Kara Harbstreet, a Kansas Local Food Fellow with K-State Research and Extension. Production and editing support from Eric Hemphill and Ami Freeberg, with intros provided by Cultivate KC staff. Keep growing, Kansas City.